All right, so get ready because today we're diving into something that's had me scratching my head ever since you sent over this source material.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's this whole thing about why humans cook
Hmm.
when other animals are perfectly happy just chomping down on raw food. I mean, it
Right.
really got me thinking, especially after that conversation you shared about food safety practices.
Well,
You know,
oh,
we actually seem pretty well suited to eating raw meat.
hi. Biologically, right?
Yeah, at least biologically.
But there's a big difference between can and should.
True.
Our source did highlight the sheer variety of tiny terrors,
Oh, yeah.
bacteria, viruses, parasites just lurking there,
Wow.
ready to hitch a ride on uncooked meat.
Oh, absolutely. E. coli,
Yeah.
salmonella. I mean, the source didn't hold back on the details
No.
about what those little guys can do to you.
Nope.
I'll admit, it made me think twice about my last rare burger.
Interesting.
Yet we humans have evolved this incredible defense mechanism.
We have.
Super strong stomach acid.
You know.
More potent than some apex predator.
I hadn't thought about that.
So our stomachs are like these churning vats of acid breaking down food.
That's a pretty vivid image.
Haha. But also giving us heartburn sometimes.
Right. So does that mean we could theoretically handle a bit of raw meat?
That's a good question.
Well, it's not quite that simple.
Really?
While our stomach acid is impressive,
Yeah.
it's not an impenetrable shield.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those pathogens are surprisingly resilient.
Which brings us to the classic sushi versus steak debate.
Ah, yes.
The source pointed out that raw seafood is generally considered safer
Okay.
than raw land-based meat. Any idea why that is?
It all has to do with the environments these organisms are adapted to.
Okay.
Ocean-dwelling microbes thrive in cold temperatures, making the warm environment of our bodies rather inhospitable to them.
So it's like they get a temperature shock when they enter our system.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, then you add the freezing process,
Right.
used for sushi-grade fish.
Uh-huh.
That helps further reduce the risk by killing off most of those harmful microorganisms.
That's a relief for sushi lovers like me. But the source did mention a few exceptions, right?
Of course.
Like that nasty norovirus
Oh, yeah.
that can survive freezing. I remember that anecdote
Yes.
about them getting sick from raw oysters.
Indeed. It serves as a reminder that no food is entirely risk-free.
That's true.
Even when prepared meticulously, there are always variables we can't fully control.
Now, the source also touched on something that's always puzzled me.
What's that?
Why is it that beef sometimes gets a pass in the raw eating world?
Like steak tartare.
Yeah, steak tartare or the Japanese dish yuko.
Well, beef does tend to have a lower risk of contamination
All right.
compared to pork or chicken.
Bro.
It's got less water content and a denser muscle structure, making it less inviting for bacterial growth.
So beef is basically a less bacteria-friendly environment.
Precisely. But let me emphasize,
Huh?
this doesn't give raw beef a free pass.
Right.
The surface can still harbor bacteria.
Got it.
There are specific guidelines for safe handling and preparation
Yeah.
if you're going to venture into that territory.
Good point. I'm also curious about that special breed of chicken in Japan.
Oh, yes.
The Shamo chicken that the source mentioned. Apparently it's sometimes eaten raw.
Yes. And the key there is how they're raised.
How so?
These birds are kept in incredibly hygienic conditions to minimize the risk of contamination.
Wow.
It really demonstrates how crucial sourcing and preparation methods are when it comes to raw meat consumption.
I see.
You really have to know where your food is coming from and how it's being handled,
That's for sure.
especially if you're considering eating it raw.
Makes sense.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
That is.
How a culture can develop such specialized practices around something that's often perceived as risky, eating raw meat.
It really highlights those cultural variations in our attitudes towards food.
It does.
Makes you wonder how much of what we consider safe is based on actual science versus cultural norms.
It's a good point. The speakers in the source even mention getting sick from raw oysters. Yeah. Even though they're commonly eaten in Japan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It suggests that even within a culture that embraces raw food,
Right.
there's still an understanding of the inherent risks involved.
Absolutely.
And it underscores the importance of individual choices
Yes,
and risk tolerance.
for sure. Speaking of risk tolerance,
Yes.
the source delved into why beef tends to be considered safer for raw consumption
Okay.
compared to other meats, like they mentioned the lower water content
Right.
and denser muscle structure of beef as factors.
Exactly. These characteristics make it less hospitable to bacteria,
They do.
particularly the kinds that can cause serious illness in humans.
Right. But it's crucial to remember that this doesn't mean raw beef is risk-free.
So it's more like a sliding scale of risk
Yes.
rather than a clear-cut safe or unsafe category.
Precisely. There's always an element of risk when it comes to food.
True.
And it's about being aware of the factors that contribute to that risk.
And part of that awareness is understanding proper handling techniques.
Oh, absolutely.
The source emphasized the importance of safe handling practices for any type of meat,
Right.
especially when consuming it raw.
Things like proper storage temperatures, using separate cutting boards and utensils
Right.
for raw and cooked meat, and of course, washing your hands thoroughly.
Always important.
All crucial steps in minimizing the risk of contamination.
They also mentioned the importance of cooking meat thoroughly to eliminate harmful bacteria.
Of course.
Thinking back to those scary parasites like trichinella they discussed, which can lurk in undercooked pork.
It highlights a key evolutionary difference between land and sea animals.
In what way?
Well, land animals often carry pathogens that are more dangerous to humans because we share a closer evolutionary lineage.
So over time, our ancestors learned to cook meat as a way to protect themselves
Exactly.
from these potentially deadly pathogens.
It became a crucial survival strategy.
Interesting. And as we evolved,
Yeah.
cooking offered other benefits beyond just safety,
It did. That's a great segue to the benefits of cooking.
which the source touched on as well.
They mention that cooking makes food easier to digest, especially protein, and it can help release nutrients
Right.
that would otherwise be locked inside cells.
So cooking is like pre-digesting our food in a way.
You could say that.
That's fascinating.
And it goes beyond just the physical process of digestion.
Really?
There's a compelling theory that the advent of cooking
Yeah.
played a significant role in the development of the human brain.
You mean that cooked food might have actually made us smarter?
That's the theory. By making more energy and nutrients readily available,
Okay.
cooked food could have fueled the growth of our energy-hungry brains.
Now that's a thought-provoking idea.
It is.
It makes you wonder about the profound impact that something as seemingly simple as cooking
Right.
has had on our evolution as a species.
It's a testament to the incredible adaptability of humans.
In what way?
Well, we've found ways to not only survive, but to thrive
Okay.
by manipulating our environment and our food sources.
And cooking isn't just about survival.
Right.
It's also about pleasure and enjoyment. The source mentioned how cooking can enhance flavors
Absolutely.
and create entirely new culinary experiences.
Think about the Maillard reaction.
What's that?
It's the chemical process that gives cooked food that delicious browning
Oh, yeah.
and savory flavor that wouldn't be possible without the application of heat.
So cooking is a kind of alchemy,
Ha. I like that.
transforming raw ingredients into something entirely new and often more delicious.
Precisely. And this transformative process has played a key role in shaping our cultures and traditions around the world.
It's amazing,
It is.
how something as everyday as cooking has played such a profound role in shaping who we are as a species.
It really has.
I mean, think about all the cultural variations and traditions around food.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder about our own eating habits.
What about them?
Well, knowing what we now know, did the source offer any insights on how we should approach them?
The source emphasized the importance of informed decision-making.
Okay.
We should be aware of the risks and benefits associated with different foods and preparation methods.
So it's not about being afraid of food,
No, not at all.
but rather being more mindful and knowledgeable about our choices.
Exactly. It's about finding a balance that works for you.
Right.
Some people might be comfortable eating certain types of raw fish,
Uh,
while others might prefer to stick to fully cooked meals.
right.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about you? Where do you fall on the raw versus cooked spectrum?
Personally, I appreciate both. Yeah. I enjoy the occasional sushi or steak tartare,
Yeah, okay.
but I also value the peace of mind that comes with knowing my food has been cooked thoroughly.
Sure.
It really comes down to the specific food,
Yeah.
source, and my own risk assessment at that moment.
I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners.
What is?
Be informed, be mindful, and make choices that align with your own comfort levels.
I agree.
It's not about being dogmatic, but rather about enjoying food in a way that feels safe and satisfying.
And remember, our understanding of food safety is constantly evolving.
Oh, that's true.
New information emerges and guidelines can change. Staying curious and informed is key
It is.
to navigating the ever-changing world of food.
Well said. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me.
In what way?
It's amazing how something as seemingly simple as cooking
Right.
can spark so much fascinating discussion about biology culture
Yeah.
and our relationship with the world around us.
It's a reminder that there's always more to discover,
Absolutely.
even in the everyday things we take for granted.
To all our listeners out there, we hope you enjoyed this exploration of raw and cooked food.
We did.
Whether you're a culinary adventurer or a cautious cook, remember to approach your next meal with a sense of curiosity and awareness. Bon appétit!